During the quiet of an early morning, an RCAF crew prepares for its next operation, a low-level bombing run. The aircraft, a B-25 Mitchell. Fast, agile, it would find its place in history as the first aircraft to bomb Tokyo. The Mitchell starts its run. A Messerschmitt makes a desperate attempt to get airborne to attack the Canadians. The attack is too little, too late. The B-25 returns, its crew safe, ready to fly again. Was this sometime in the 1940s, at the height of the war years? No. What you have just seen was a recreation. This is the 1980s, and these are members of the Canadian Warplane Heritage, whose sole mission is to find, restore, and make airworthy the magnificent aircraft flown by the Canadians in World War II. It begins here, in a hangar at Mount Hope Airport near Hamilton. Rusty skeletons found in fields and the dusty corners of airports almost anywhere in the world. Thousands of man-hours and tens of thousands of dollars go into every restoration project. But why? And how did it all begin? Dennis Bradley, President and Founding Director.
Canadian Warplane Heritage was a product of a conversation held quite impromptu on the ferry running between the foot of Bathurst Street and the Toronto Island Airport. An acquaintance of mine and I were coming back from a flight up north and discussed how exciting it would be to fly a big-engine World War II combat aircraft. We had just recently returned from Reno, Nevada, where the races were held, and had seen these airplanes in flight. We decided that there was enough interest between the two of us to pursue it. And after much searching and traveling around, we found out that there was an aircraft in Australia that we thought would have been a good project. We heard it was a Seafire, and checking it out, we found it was a Firefly. We ultimately found a Firefly in southern United States that we acquired, restored to flying condition. While we were doing this, we found out that nobody in Canada had the idea or the gumption to pursue the acquisition of World War II aircraft, preserving them as a memorial to people who flew them in combat and training. And in order to make a viable group out of the few volunteers we had at that time, we decided to form a foundation. And Canadian Warplane Heritage was founded. The assets that were held in the non-share capital corporation at that time were donated to the foundation, and we then went after more donations of both the aircraft and capital and grew the foundation to what it is today.
Today, there are over 300 members, men, women, all ages, all walks of life, with a common interest. And on this day, near Hamilton, Ontario, those who will manage and fly in one of the most spectacular annual air shows in North America listen attentively to the pre-flight briefing.
Coming years will certainly overcome the problems, so you're not faced with it again.
Air power as it once was. More than 35,000 spectators from the United States and Canada have driven or flown to see this emotional return to the past. The Spitfire, victor of the Battle of Britain, drew its lineage from the great supermarine racing aircraft. That so few airworthy examples remain is sad indeed. And fortunate are those who witnessed the beautifully shaped wings of a Spitfire in flight. And hear the melodic tenor saxophone sound of its Rolls-Royce V12 engine. Corsair, Sea Fury, Mustang, Bearcat, Avenger, Spitfire, Thunderbolt, the most powerful aircraft of their type ever created. Once deadly weapons, now admired as objects of beauty and high performance. Yet the thought remains, why expend so much time, so much energy, and particularly so much money to restore instruments of war? Surely not to glorify death and destruction. But the war in which these aircraft and their pilots flew took courage, dedication, a giving of oneself, often one's life, in the name of freedom. And so the Canadian Warplane Heritage is a memorial, a living memorial, to those who flew for freedom. Mount Hope is a different airport in winter. Away from the glamour of showtime, the work goes on. Day after day, year-round, full-time workers and part-time volunteers acquired dirty fingernails and aching muscles. Aircraft are rebuilt from what appears to be little more than junk, then meticulously maintained. As a result of these efforts, the Canadian Warplane Heritage has become internationally respected. Phil Nelson explains.
Certainly, I think now that we are a full 10 years old, our credibility in the international atmosphere of museums and aviation organizations has risen to the point where we have to take great pride in what we're doing. We are considered by other museums as a world leader in our quality of restoration, and we're very proud of that fact. At the same time, we are now being accessed by museums all around the world for our research information, for our expertise in maintaining aircraft, in acquiring aircraft parts, in our record keeping of artifacts that are located around the world. We've also taken innovative steps to further our rapport with international museums by donating outright to them artifacts that are surplus to our requirements, sharing with them aircraft that we have here that are surplus to the foundation. And because of that, we've built up an excellent rapport, both in the museum field and in corporations and private citizens from around the world who now write to us or come and visit us to learn from us.
To many who watch the warbirds, like the huge crowds at the Canadian National Exhibition, the war is not even a memory. Time then to enjoy the aircraft for what they are, rare and fascinating flying machines. Yellow section, in their traditional color of RCAF training aircraft, brings back memories to the thousands who learned to fly in these aircraft in the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan.
The bulk of the funding that comes into Canadian Warplane Heritage comes from the private sector, comes from people who share that common interest of preserving these aircraft in flying condition. It comes via corporations that citizens are involved in donations. It comes from foundations who share our interest in preserving the museum aspects of the foundation. We do receive assistance from the provincial government here in Ontario towards some of our operating expenses. It's a small grant, but we're quite happy to have it. And our federal government here in Canada recognizes the foundation in two ways. One, through the awarding of cultural property status, which is highly significant in attracting large donations of aircraft and equipment to the foundation, and also by providing us not with capital, but with monies that are expended for job creation programs. And so we take advantage of summer student programs, a continuative project which provides us, as an example, with 33 students. And the government picks up the tab for their wages and for their administration costs. We're quite fortunate to get the government support, but the main support comes from our members internationally and people who contribute to the foundation because they want to see us keep preserving the aircraft in flying condition.
The Harvards, their distinctive sound instantly recognizable, were once a familiar sight over Toronto's Island Airport. Built in Canada, the Harvards were the high-performance trainer of World War II. aim of the Canadian Warplane Heritage is to acquire examples of aircraft flown by Canadian airmen in what was once a vast aircraft industry. Airplanes like the Spitfire, the Mosquito, the Lancaster, and almost all the trainers were manufactured in Canada. The heritage is a reminder of the country's ability to mobilize its technology and manufacturing skills. Restoration of an aircraft to flying condition is no simple task. Parts are sometimes impossible to find and have to be manufactured. Much work is done by hand. To help justify the continuous expense, the heritage serves many useful museum functions. Bill McBride talks to curator Anna Bradford.
Canada's participation in the Allied effort during World War II is very often overlooked in favor of the United States or Great Britain. The function of Canadian Warplane Heritage is to, as is the case with any museum, to collect, to document, to conserve, and to exhibit to the public not only the aircraft, but also the many artifacts and related items that are the tangible links to Canada's tremendous contribution to the air war during World War II. The person who is responsible for maintaining and keeping the museum developing is the associate curator, Miss Anna Bradford. Anna, you could tell us perhaps what the other function of the museum is related to the library.
We do have a research library here. We hope it's going to be the best specialized aviation library in Canada. We set up our own systems, and we have over 2,000 manuals and publications on aviation and about 5,000 magazines now.
It's a very good museum, and we hope that people will come to visit it.
At the Canadian Forces Base in Trenton, this superbly restored Dakota is being dedicated to the 435 and 436 Burma Star Squadrons. Some of the original members who were based here attended the ceremony. In their honor, the aircraft has been given the squadron's nickname, Canucks Unlimited. Stu Brickenden flew Dakotas and still does.
I first started flying in 1943, but by the time I finished training, I was too young to get in any action with the RCAF. And after the war, I went back to university and went back in the Air Force. About 23 years, and retired to go into executive jet flying.
This is Geneseo, New York. The Heritage has taken its Air Force south of the border, an international gesture of goodwill. Warplanes from the museum often fly at air shows far beyond home base, so that others may be reminded of the Canadian contribution. A group in the United States, Friends of the Canadian Warplane Heritage, has been formed to contribute financially and with aircraft donations. The ability to take the museum to the people makes this reminder of our heritage uniquely worthwhile. One of Heritage's most remarkable restorations has been performed on the legendary Lancaster 4-engine bomber, a project made viable with the help of Air Canada. Stu Brickenden.
I started on Lancasters in 1961 after finishing a tour in jet fighters. That's the reverse of the normal procedure. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was a real challenge. I flew them in search and rescue after they were taken off maritime patrol, and flew them until they went into the service. This will be, when it's finished, will be the only flying Lancaster in North America and one of two in the world. And it's particularly significant, I think, because it's the one airplane that more people were involved in during the war than any other aircraft, because firstly it was built in Canada, and the RCF crewed many of the squadrons from England. So I maintain that there were more people working on Lancasters, either building them, maintaining them, or flying them, than any other airplane in Canada.
Few who lived through the Battle of Britain will forget the valiant Hawker Hurricane. Only 3 still fly, 2 at the RAF, and this Mark IIB, built in Canada in 1942. The latest heritage acquisition. It has finally been repatriated. Anyone can join the Canadian Warplane Heritage. New members are welcome. Though the original museum remains at Hamilton's Mount Hope Airport and continues to grow, other wings are already being formed in cities across Canada, including Victoria, Winnipeg, and Quebec. Costly to maintain, but vital to our sense of history, the Canadian Warplane Heritage will continue to search for wrecks and relics. Few will be found, fewer still restored to flying condition. But through the physical and financial help of many, Canadians can now look to the sky and see the past.